Okay, Jen is a learning support school-based. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, well then I am going to get started. Um, Trying to find my there, okay. Today is a session I'm offering. It's called Unlocking the Secrets, the Ultimate Administrator Toolkit for Transforming Math Classrooms. And it is a session that is designed primarily for administrators, but absolutely awesome that we've got teachers here
Absolutely.
and pre-service. That is fantastic, because I always tell administrators this is nothing you should be hiding from your teachers. And so teachers should be aware of what are principals looking for, what are administrators looking for when they are doing their walkthroughs. So before we start, I would like to do a land acknowledgement, and um, I would like to acknowledge the many First Nations, the Métis, Inuit people who have cared for, lived on, and celebrated these lands for many years. Today, as we gather virtually, we take a moment to express our gratitude for the land that supports us and to recognize the deep connections all peoples have to it. Now, this is a picture of the Three Sisters Mountains in Canmore, and Tammy is smiling because she knows that I frequent Canmore. I love Canmore. Um, just nothing to do with this, but Tammy's son and my daughter, not related, not married to each other, both have condos that they have on Airbnb in Canmore. So that's why we laugh.
We're smiling.
And we smile because we get to visit Canmore. But as we reflect on this image of the majestic Three Sisters Mountains, let's take a moment to think about how we can each move forward in a spirit of reconciliation, respect, and collaboration, honoring the histories and cultures of all those who have walked these lands before us. Thank you. Well, I'm Yolanda Seletsky, and here is a photo actually of one of my trips in to Canmore last year. Um, Long story short, where I fell off of a mountain, but I'm fine.
She's
Anyway,
still here.
I'm still here, but I really wanted to see the beauty of the trees when they turn yellow in the in fall. And I am a teacher. I tried to calculate it yesterday. Can you believe it? Math teacher here trying to calculate how many years I've been in education. I graduated in 1983, and so that's over 40 years. I was a teacher at St. Albert Catholic Schools where I taught math, and then I um, got a role at district office where I was the math and numeracy consultant for many years. And I also, during that time, because St. Albert Catholic is a small board, they can't afford to have a full-time consultant. Um, I was seconded half-time to the consortia. And so I was seconded in 2007 to the consortia, and I have been here ever since.
Mhm.
Um, I am a mom of three adult young ladies that are now all professionals, two nurses and a pharmacist. And I always love to add in that three young girls that were successful in mathematics, all for different reasons. And so I might talk about a few of the different reasons that they had for being successful during the session. But during today's session, we're going to talk about the rationale and purpose of the documents that we produced at the consortia. We'll talk about how you can build a mathematically rich school or a mathematically rich classroom for those of you who are in classrooms. And we'll talk about the principal classroom observation checklist that we put together. And we'll talk about ways to implement all of this in your schools. Um, at the end, I will give you all, all of the additional resources that I will talk about during the session today. As this document that we produced took, we thought we'd start it off with, oh yeah, we'll be done in 3 or 4 months. Actually, we thought we'd be done on a weekend when we got together, right, Tammy?
We sure did.
And that weekend turned into months, and months turned into years. And after 2 years of work, we finally got a document that we put out. One of the reasons that we put it, and well, what one of the things is when we were putting it out, we were um, referring to many, many resources that are out there. And we tried to compile it all into this document. And so, like I said, at the very end, I will give you the list of all of the resources that we used so that if you wanted to go further into your research on any of these things, you could do so also. There's lots of great reads out there, and you might even want to incorporate some of these books as book studies within in your school. So why did we do this? Well, the main reason is we know that our administrators are out there, and a lot of administrators, like teachers, might have a phobia of mathematics, or they might just say, I don't even know what I should be looking for in a math classroom specifically. I know what to look for signs of good pedagogy across the board, but not specific to mathematics. Or we get administrators that also say, I'm not sure that that's what it's supposed to look like. And so what we did was we started at that point, but we found that, and that research will indicate that schools will change when leaders lead that change. And your influence that you have and the power that you have to transform classrooms and inspire lasting change is immense. And so we really wanted to supply you with something that you could use in your schools or in your school districts. So one of the most important areas where the transformation can take place is basically the way mathematics is taught. After all these years, I have, like all of my career, we are still trying to change the way math is taught. Why? We keep getting results that are not where we want them. We keep getting students that are saying, I can't do math. We still get students that say, I hate math. We still are hiring tutors for math, and we're starting these tutors in elementary. You honestly, you would not believe the number of calls and emails I got over this summer, starting in about April last year. Ilana, do you know any math tutors? My daughter's in grade 2 and she's struggling. My daughter's in grade 12 and she's struggling. And we need to change the way that math is taught. There's no question about it. We need to have effective math instruction so that we can unlock students' potential. We need to foster critical thinking in mathematics. We need to open doors to all these opportunities that are available to them in mathematics and that require mathematics. I worry, I worry about our students very much that are going into grade 7 this year, that they might not be ready for high school in 3 years. I worry about kids that are entering grade 1, that if things aren't changed, these kids are going to struggle. I worry about this, as do a lot of math consultants. So, in your role, for those of you who are administrators, you have the opportunity to lead this change. And so we want to give you this resource so that you know what to look for and what it should look like. So we want you to know at the consortia that we're in this with you. We want to help you with this. We will provide any professional learning that is necessary for yourselves or for teachers or for your teacher assistants so that we can all make this change. And really, please know that together we can make a change that matters. So I'll give you a second just to read this because I'm not going to read my screen to you. And I'll talk about it in a second. Okay, so I want to say, first of all, I saw this quote come out in 2009. 2009, I remember in my role as a consultant trying to lead that change. And then again, I went to a math conference in 2014 and heard Hattie speak at the National Council of Teachers of Math, the NCTM conference. And we're still talking about it today in 2025. This is still relevant. And so, really, we need to make these changes sooner than later. So, like again, like I said, this guide that we made is a resource for administrators who have identified math as an area of development in their schools or in their school districts. It's specifically designed to help you guide that change. This is not a resource that we want you to hide from teachers. This is a resource that we want you to share with them so that they also see that these are things that guide strong math education. So we designed it to help you, to guide you with ideas to build that culture. And one of the things that I want to say is it strongly supports the LQS and the TQS. And so I did send you the link to this document on yesterday morning. I'm trying to remember all my days. Yesterday morning, Monday morning. And I wanted you to have it because I wanted you to see in advance what's in there. So if you did not get the link, all you have to do is go to aplc.ca. You go to curriculum resources. In this search right here, just put the word administrator, and you will find that it'll come up to this page here. And you will find that when you get here, there are two documents. One document looks like this Administrator's Guide to Support Math. It is the overarching foundational document for everything. And then there is a Word document with a principal classroom observation and conversation guide. And that is a Word document because we want you to be able to use it and add in things that you want to add in or take things away. It's overwhelming. You're never going to walk into a classroom and look for every single thing that's in that observation checklist. You are going to hopefully choose areas with your teachers that are being observed or being I guess the word is observed. And if you want them to know, and you want to choose areas with them that you want that you are going to observe. So before we go into the checklist, there are areas in this resource that I want to address. First of all, math versus numeracy. There's many schools out there that have a school goal or a district goal to increase numeracy across in their schools. Then there's schools that have a goal that is to increase math knowledge in their schools. There's a difference. There's a difference, and we want you to know that there's a difference. And before we even begin with that, I need you to know that this resource is specifically to increase math teaching. We find that when math teaching increases, numeracy will also increase. But numeracy is across the grades. And numeracy is across the subject areas. It is not just in mathematics. It starts in mathematics, but it is cross-curricular. So if you're math is the universal language that uses skills and procedures and knowledge to communicate ideas and to solve real-life problems. Thus, when you look at the new curriculum that is out, we have cusps. And those cusps are the knowledge, the understandings, the skills and procedures. Using those cusps, we can increase math scores in our schools, because if we use those cusps properly, what we're doing is what we also see what kids need to know in order to show that they are reaching that outcome. Numeracy, on the other hand, Alberta Ed has their own definition for numeracy, and numeracy involves acquiring and applying that math knowledge and skills that is needed to engage with all quantitative and spatial information in a variety of situations, meaning across all subject areas. So in 2016, we came out with this document for administrators and schools to increase numeracy in schools across all subject areas. And you can go to the APLC website and find that. And like I said, I'll give you all of these links at the end. You don't have to look for everything. Your links will be in one place. So what we have here is this document. We also produced a website for you that gives you ideas on how to create numeracy-rich environments in schools. And so in this, there are things for activities, there's bulletin boards and display ideas, there's connections to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, there's things for hallways. We've also, what you can do in your hallways to show that numeracy is happening in social studies, in science, in connecting it to even language arts. There are ways we can do this. And then we also there's a section there for literature and literature connections and things that you can use for connections with parents and families at home. So this is a website that has all of that. Math, on the other hand, is a whole different ball game. And so what we started off was talking about the math vocabulary, and Tammy led this this um, whole thing to build this document on math vocabulary. And so what we did first of all is we went through every single word in the document that relates to math, and we made a math vocabulary document, and it's an interactive document that is part of the curriculum. And so again, you're going to find this on the on the APLC website. It's a living document. It continues to be enhanced with additional links over time, right, Tammy? Because
Absolutely. And
we
Yelena, I just want to give a shout out to Jackie Radovics too, because I know she poured a lot of her hard work into the creation of this vocabulary support document too. So just kind of wanted to give a shout out to her. But yes, those live links are always the
not
bane of
so
our
live.
existence, not so live.
Yeah. And so anyway, we started with that. And so first of all, like words like quantity, what does quantity mean? So if you press on the any word that is highlighted, it'll take you to the definition of whatever that is and whatever it should look like in your classroom. But what they found was when they started this document was the words in skills and procedures were really math action verbs. What does it look like for kids? What, like, if they need to recognize or represent or relate, what does it look like when they're doing that in mathematics? And that's when Tammy and her group came out with, and Tammy, please feel free to jump in at any time when about this document. So there's a few documents in here, not just one. And first of all, the first document defines all the student action verbs within the Alberta context. So teachers need to understand what students need to know and understand to achieve the outcome. In K to 3, there's 55 different action verbs. In K to 4, in 4 to 6, there's 54 action verbs, and many of those action verbs are also found across the curriculum. And these are the words that we use to engage our students in our classroom. And so once the ladies did this, then this resource package came out. And in this resource package, there's a glossary definition cards. And then there's toolkits for teachers. And in those toolkits, there's in-depth definitions, there's support activities, there's additional sets for tasks and lessons. And so this document in itself is just it's massive. And like, I personally love this. I know I went to many classrooms in the last 2 years, and I love the fact that a lot of these math action verbs, the teachers printed them off and they had them on their math vocabulary wall. And so what does it look like, for example, to model something or to justify? And so it helps teachers also. Um, it helps teachers when they are actually assessing students also, because there's a huge difference between just doing something and understanding something. And this curriculum really tries to get at it in those cusps. And so those action verbs really are important for teachers. Tammy, is there anything you wanted to?
I was just going to, yeah, I mean, I echo everything that Yolanda shared, but it really is important, as you know, for teachers in the classroom that they are utilizing, like, you know, Yolanda shared, there are over 50 some different verbs in our skills and procedures and our learning outcomes. So it's really important that as classroom teachers that teachers are engaging their students in a whole variety of activities and keeping in mind that there's different cognitive levels to these verbs as well. So it becomes a very important document, not only for students, but more, I think, even for teachers. It was something when we went to design this that I had hoped that I had had when I was teaching. What does it truly mean to justify or to interpret what we know are higher level functioning verbs, and then to have some concrete examples of what that might look like. So it is a great resource to really support you, or as an administrator with your work with teachers to help them understand all of the varied to student actions that students need to do, to achieve those learning outcomes.
Okay. And
And
so,
yes,
so I like honestly, I commend Tammy and her crew for the work that was done on these
is
resource
Kim
packages.
Matoska, Kim Matoska Waugh, who has a lot of um, expertise in the area of assessment. Her and I, like we said, we talk about how long it takes to make these documents. We always have this, oh, unrealistic. Oh, it should only take us a while. This too was months and months and months of hard labor. And just a little aside, because we were very intentional in choosing the visuals that we wanted to go with the cards, the vocabulary cards. So for all of you out there, it is an aspen leaf. We've heard many other of what those little pictures represent, but it is an aspen leaf. And just as an aside, it was representative of all of our students. And aspen trees are native to Alberta and grow all over Alberta. So just a little aside for you, when you're looking at the vocabulary cards to share with your students.
And Tammy, Nicole is so nice to
I
see.
know, that's what I was.
Were these created in French?
Yes, it was.
So there you go. And so, yes, all of these I'm going to give you. Congratulations, Nicole, on your position at Black Gold. I'm
Absolutely.
so happy for you. Anyway, so all of these links, like I said, all of them you're going to get at the end because there's just so many that we could
There are, and I'm trying to put some in, but like
literally,
always, right? Yeah,
literally, I think there's over 40 or 50 links that
I
we
think
could.
so too. So there's no way I can catch up, but I know Yolana is excellent at sharing out all of these at the end.
Okay. And then one of the other things that I wanted to bring to your attention is we really need to be intentional on how we say numbers. Um, I know that first of all, when we said numbers before, um, when I was growing up, whole numbers, we used the word and, like 415. We no longer use the word and represents the decimal. So if I said 415, the question would be, and 15 what? And so we really need to be intentional on how we say whole numbers, but we also need to be very intentional on how we say decimals and fractions. We need to stop saying 0.1 or 1/10 as a fraction. It is correctly said as 1/10. And you will see when we have these words 1/10, 100th, 1,000th, if we start with these words right from the very beginning, whenever they are introduced in the curriculum, we will have students that will have a deeper understanding of actually what the quantity is of those words, of those numbers. When we say 0.001, that number has that word has absolutely no value. That's all positional language. We need to stop that positional language. We have to say what it actually is, 1,000th. And so this first of all, teachers, pre-service teachers, administrators, this is a non-negotiable. You must say your numbers. You must say your numbers correctly. And so, for example, 2/10. When I say that number 2/10, you should visualize that I can write that as a decimal or as a fraction right away. 35/100. How much is that? I can write that as a decimal or as a fraction. 48,000ths. How do I write that as a decimal or a fraction? We need to say those numbers correctly. Alberta Education constantly puts this question on the PAT exams in grade 6. They say the number like 35/100ths and they ask, what is that as a decimal and a fraction? And or they write the word, or they write the decimal and they say, write this as a fraction. And less than half of our province can actually convert that decimal to a fraction. There's no reason for that. The only reason is that we are not saying those numbers correctly. So that's a non-negotiable when we talk about vocabulary. And so we really want to make sure when we're doing fractions, we also write those fractions properly and not with a slash, but with it's a one number over another number. And we need to say those numbers properly. We can say them as 2/3 or even 2/1/3. We start in grade 2 counting by unit fractions. And so kids start with 2/1/3, and then by the grade 3, they convert that to 2/3. And do not say it as a positional, using positional language like 2/3. It is 2/3 or 2/1/3. So the other thing that we addressed in this document is fluency and automaticity. So automaticity is based on memorization of basic facts. Tammy did a whole session yesterday on automaticity and fluency, and I could speak on this for another hour, and I don't have time, but I just want to say it is important that kids know basic facts, but you cannot just teach it by memorization. It must be a result of understanding. So for example, we give a question like 45 times 16. Automaticity of all my basic facts, I have it, but how useful is that when I'm trying to solve 45 times 16? Well, first of all, we start breaking down numbers. There's so many different ways we can solve this, but it is important that I still know my numbers. But in the end, I need to know that 45 times 16 is the same as 90 times 8. And now that I know that it's the same as 90 times 8, I can actually solve that without paper and pencil. I need to reason through it. Same thing with 5 times 26. We teach, unfortunately, we start with skip counting by fives. How useful is that for 5 times 26? I'm going to go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 30, all the way to 26 times. Or better yet, it is the same as 10 times 13. Oh, I can do that in my head. And so we want to make sure that we work on fluency in our classrooms. Procedural fluency is the ability to apply our procedures efficiently, flexibly, and accurately, and to be able to take those procedures and apply them to different problems and contexts, or to build and modify procedures from other procedures and to recognize one strategy or procedure that is more appropriate to use than another. For example, that doubling and halving is, you can use it, but it's really hard if both numbers are odd, for example. But once you get into junior high and you start and you're really good with fractions, you can still use that procedure. It just becomes a little more difficult. But there's also always other procedures that are more useful. And so we teach our basic facts by procedures that work with all numbers. They must work with all whole numbers and all decimals. If that procedure doesn't work that way, then please don't teach it.
Mhm.
And so this resource, which I, Tammy and I both love, is Figuring Out Fluency in Mathematics by John Sangiovanni. John Sangiovanni has written so many books about building fluency, and they define fluency. The real fluency is the ability to take a strategy, to adapt it, to modify it, to change it out, to find solutions with accuracy. It is, and they really, really emphasize it's not the act of replicating someone else's steps or procedures for doing math. It's the act of thinking, reasoning, and doing one's math on their own. That is our goal in the end, is to have students to think, to reason, and do math on their own. So these are the great books that we highly recommend for building fluency. And Tammy related to all these books yesterday. I just wanted to quickly tell you what the difference is between these and this book. This book gives you all the procedures, all the strategies, etc. These books give you activities for building all those strategies in using different numbers, either whole numbers for one book, or the other book, like for example, this one is figuring out addition and subtraction with whole numbers, and this red one is addition and subtraction with fractions and decimals, but using those same strategies. Highly recommend that these books are in the library for teachers to be able to choose, to be able to use and choose and use in their classrooms. These also, this book here, I can't remember. Tammy, do you remember what year this book was written?
Uh, Gosh, I actually have it right behind me. Hold on.
Oh,
Look at this. Oh, can't see because of the background, but it is
yeah.
right there. Oh, let me check for you as you continue to talk.
Okay. I know it was written a long time,
2011.
2011.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 14 years ago, and we're still saying use these resources.
Absolutely. I'm just
The
going to
other
echo
resource,
that because these are worth buying.
yeah. And then the other thing that I really recommend is these videos for building strategies that are on the Origo One YouTube channel. They're 1 minute videos to help you and students understand strategies. So now let's dig into the teacher, the administrator guide for building a mathematically rich school. So I have to tell you, when we first started building this book, this resource, we really wanted to narrow it down to categories. And so the three categories that we narrowed it down to for building a mathematically rich school is equity, the learning environment, and teaching and assessment practices. And we find, this is on page 5 of the resource, we find that many of the things in the checklists can also flow from one area to the other. Like equity really is found in the learning environment. But the learning environment also has to have some really strong teaching and assessment practices. So it was really hard for us to uh, categorize things, but we really, in the end, brought it down to these three categories. And what we said was, oh, let's put them and into the three categories so that administrators can see what it really looks like if we're building equity, because that's so important. So what we did is we not only have a resource that blew in, but we also made a checklist. And so when you open that checklist, please know it's just meant to provide options for growth and to start a conversation in your class with your teachers or in your school. You need to choose an area that you want to focus on. Please, 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 please do not go into a classroom with the entire document. It is overwhelming. You won't have time to be looking for everything. We would like people to use that, to incorporate it into their school growth plan, or for teachers to put it into their growth plans, for schools to incorporate it into their education plans. Administrators, please share this with your staff and talk about what, have them talk about what their areas of strength are or areas of growth are, and decide as a school or as a teacher what I want to concentrate on. So, like I said, we brought it down into three different categories: equity, learning environment, and teaching and assessment practices. But please know, a lot of these can flow into the other categories. Remember, slow and steady, slow and steady. Don't think you can do it all at one time. And so what I want to do is just take some time to go over, what do we mean by the three areas? And so, is equity the same as equality? Well, if we look at these pictures, I think pictures give us are better than 1,000 words. Mm-hmm. So equality basically is treating everyone the same, regardless if it's needed or not. Equity is taking in those differences that students may have, so, and adapting things so that they are successful, so that they have a chance to succeed. We have to understand their barriers and circumstances or conditions. Now, we need to know that inequality has affected many people historically. It used to be women. And now we also have inequality for men, people of color, the ethnic background, disabilities, economically disadvantaged students. And especially in Canada, there's great inequality for people with Indigenous backgrounds. People with Indigenous backgrounds didn't even want people to know that they were Indigenous. And today we're dealing with LGBTQ communities that are also facing inequalities. So achievement, we need to know achievement absolutely cannot be predicted by their race, by their ethnicity, by linguistic gender, or their socioeconomic backgrounds. We, in our schools, wherever you are, have to believe that every student can learn math. Every student can be successful. But this takes some reflection and acknowledgement on our own behalf. We need to acknowledge that we may have some biases. We may acknowledge that we have some beliefs or practices. So, and we need to acknowledge that we have to change some of them. We need to create a learning environment that will foster this growth and inclusion and opportunities for every student. We need to break down barriers in our classrooms. We need to confront inequalities, and we need to make sure that all students are successful. My dream, my dream is to stop hearing, I hate math, I can't do math. That should be every administrator's dream. I also, we have to, as administrators, we have to stop, and this is a non-negotiable. Teachers, we can't say, I hate math, and we have to also stop saying, I never was good at math. We're giving out signals to our students that students don't need to hear. We need to stop teachers in high schools from saying, okay, this is Math 10C, 10 to 20% of you are going to drop out by the end of September. My question is why? Why would they have to drop out? You, the teacher, have that responsibility to make sure that everyone is successful. They got into Math 10 because they were successful, and so continue that success. So equity, Alberta School Councils Association, ASCA, came out with the removal of systemic barriers and biases, enabling all individuals to have equal opportunity to access and benefit from a program, product, or service in our schools, and in our case, from our math classrooms. So equity really needs to focus on building strong relationships with all of our students. Has to have, every student has to have respect in our classrooms. Teachers must believe that all children can learn math. We need to build mathematical mindsets. Not only do we have to build mathematical mindset in some schools, in some schools we need to build actually growth mindsets, but particularly building growth mindsets in mathematics. And we need to have access to support where needed. So one of the things that we also talked about when we were doing this, like access to support needed, might even be manipulative for some students. And so here is where equity also has to do with teaching and learning environments. So to break through our biases and beliefs, we have to acknowledge and reflect on our own biases. As teachers and as administrators, we have to commit to lifelong learning. We have to examine our expectations and practices. We need to build relationships based on trust and respect. We need to create a culturally responsive classroom. We need to confront microaggressions and discriminations and hold yourself accountable to make sure to say all students can learn. And so in the checklist, we gave things like this, questions to consider, things to look for in the classroom. And there's different points to this. Please take a look at it. And the third column is once you have observed in the classroom, we gave you some conversation starters, something that you can ask your teachers. Teachers that are here, take a look at these things and really reflect on things that you are strong in and things that you need to grow in, and use this for your own personal growth. And so the second category that we talked about was the learning environment. And so a great quote came from Lainey Salmons, who wrote, she did guided math. And she said to principals and administrators and to everyone, it should be really obvious when you enter a classroom that math is that you know that math is being taught and numeracy is valued in that classroom. So if you're looking to build numeracy, you want to make sure that you can walk into any classroom and see that numeracy is valued in that classroom, whether it is the teacher who just teaches language arts or to the teacher who teaches everything. And we want to make sure that math and numeracy are both valued. So how? Well, there's different things, and these are the areas that we decided that we would focus on for learning environment. Learning has to be visible. We need to also be providing Indigenous perspectives in our mathematics classrooms. Set up classroom routines. That has to be really obvious. Do you have classroom routines set up so that kids know what is required of them? And when I talk about also classroom routines, I want to just mention again, this is where we can provide manipulatives fall in here also. Um, but we also want to make sure we're communicating with our families. We want to hear mathematical discourse in our classrooms. We want kids to have some productive struggle. And like mentioned before, we want to see the use of manipulatives in our classrooms. Now, how do we do that? Well, we want to, like I said, welcoming and inclusive environments. We want to make sure that math learning is visible. We want to make sure that we are hearing our students talk. I still remember to this day, I was doing an activity in mathematics, and the kids were working with manipulatives, and they were around their desks and they were working in groups, and it was really quite loud in the classroom. And my principal walked in and I just about died. I thought, oh my gosh. And so I went up to him and I remember saying, I'm so sorry. They're working on a math problem. And like, and he said, I know, I can hear them. He said, and I said, I'm so sorry. And he said, no, no, it is awesome. The math language that is happening in this classroom is unbelievable. Yelena, they're arguing about a problem. And then I also remember hearing the one day where the phys ed teacher said to me, Yelena, what did you do in math today? They were arguing in the locker room about the answer. And I thought, beautiful. My math has gone beyond my classroom. Great. And we also want to make sure that we always see resources, manipulatives, and visuals incorporated into our classrooms. So there's so many ways that we want things that we want to see in our classroom, but we really want to make sure that we believe in our students. We believe in things, and I'm telling you, one of the things that I would have changed to like immediately, my first change, there's so much I would change if I was to go back into a classroom today, but one of the things I would change right away is, why would I make them use a pencil in math? Like, you know what? Get over it. Value mistakes. Mistakes allow kids to grow. They don't need to keep erasing if they've made a mistake. How do you see what they're thinking if they're constantly erasing? And we want kids to understand that you value that they don't understand yet. And struggle is allowing their brains to grow. There's so many books out there now about fostering growth mindsets. But I'm going to tell you, these three are my absolute favorites. And I think Tammy's also, about growth mindsets in the classroom. The mathematical mindset, I think Jo Boaler was
I think she was instrumental, like
oh,
the
and yeah, she definitely was instrumental. And it makes me sad that I follow her on Instagram, and it makes me sad that she is being attacked continuously for her research that proves that every student can learn mathematics. And so any one of these books is great, but my favorite is The Mathematical Mindset. These books are great for just building mindsets overall, growth mindsets in classrooms for kids, to believe in themselves and for teachers to believe in their students. But you also want to see math happening. So you want it visible throughout the school, in the classrooms, etc. And one of the things that I stress and value more than anything is we need to have a consistently changing math word wall. They need the words, the math vocabulary. They need to see the action verbs up there. And we need to see how these words are used in the math that we're using, that we're doing. So we want to see different how we teach it. There has to be like small group instruction happening. No more desks in rows doesn't work for mathematics. It doesn't work for kids anyway. And we want to make sure that we have math stations. And we want to know that there's mathematical conversations happening in the classrooms. So one of the things that's very much out there now is building thinking classrooms. This is a great photo taken from Peter Liljedahl's website, where kids are actually in groups of 3 and they are solving problems, and kids can look around the classrooms and see others. And this is a great way for teachers to actually also assess their students. And so here's an example of how learning environments also fall into the assessment category. This is the time, and those small groups and etc. This is amazing. And like I see Chelsea just said she used this with her grade 2s this year. I love it. They loved it. And I bet, Chelsea, you found kids that were really doing well and trying and understand what the problem was, right? Yes. Okay. And so when we're looking at building thinking classrooms, it all came from this one book, the Orange Book. And Peter has been at the consortium many, many times. And now we bring in Kyle Webb, who works with Peter Liljedahl about building thinking classrooms in the schools. And we have so many people out there now that are becoming like leaders in this area. And they are saying, oh my God, my kids really are getting it. And I also know we have some university professors that are teaching using the thinking classroom model. So anyway, there are 3 other books that Peter has come out with now, and they are here. One is K to 5, like math tasks that you can use. And this book comes out, I think it's in November, for grade 6 to 12. We want to make sure that the students have access to resources, literature, and math manipulatives in their classrooms. I cannot believe, I'm just going to talk about my own situation. When I worked at a school in St. Albert, and I was responsible for buying all the math manipulatives for the school that came in 2016, and we spent thousands on those math manipulatives. To this day, which is now 2006, not 2016, 2006. 15 years later, I am getting phone calls from teachers in that school saying, where are the math manipulatives? So there's a couple of things. A, teachers, those math manipulatives that are purchased by the school belong to the school. They need to stay in the school when you leave. Teachers need to know that, where can I find them, and sign them out to have them in their classrooms. They must be accessible to all classrooms. I know that many, many, many boards bought each classroom a set of manipulatives. And honestly, it makes me so sad to know that they have disappeared over the years. And they need to be replenished. But I do know that when this curriculum came out a couple of years ago, schools were once again buying manipulatives, but I cannot stress the importance administrators and teachers need to know, and administrators have to watch for, especially in June, how resources can walk out of the buildings. So in September, we have to make sure that we have them. And where are they? And so another book, another two books that are great are Visible Math. That's also how can we make math visible in our classrooms. And then there's a book of Glossary of Manipulatives. And so these books give you great ideas. Now, one of the books that I should have put on here, can you see this?
So,
It is Mastering Math Manipulatives. There's two different books. One is K-3, the other one is 4-6. These two resources have actually become my go-to, and I will make sure that they are in the list of resources at the end of today. Those are new that I purchased a year ago. I think it was Tammy that told me about them. And when I got them, I thought, oh, wow, if I was a classroom teacher, these books are awesome. Awesome. They'll tell you what is the best manipulative to choose for that concept and what you're looking for. Or for each lesson, it also gives you another choice to use for that concept, another manipulative, so that you're not always using the same manipulatives. Okay, so again, there's learning environment. So what you are looking for, and then there's some conversation starters for the learning environment. Something that also came out last year, since we put this book product together, is the Indigenous Ways of Knowing website. And if this website is amazing, and
I
there,
echo that.
okay, they have linked Indigenous ways of knowing to every outcome that they could make a link to. And so if you were to go there and just click on the mathematics, you will find links to every outcome from K-6. And I want to take that back. Not every outcome can have an Indigenous link, but every link that they felt that you could make a link, Indigenous way of knowing link to, they did. So please do go to that website. So again, like the other thing is one of the things that we want to talk about is how's the teacher communicating and supporting families? Like what are teachers doing? So maybe the other thing is math nights, etc. But if you look at the checklist, there's different areas for each different questions to consider for each area. So do not go in with the entire checklist, but talk to the teacher. Maybe they want you to take a look at what they're doing to communicate, for example, to communicate with parents every month or every week. And you might want to take a look at this because you, as an administrator, may not know what Nicole is doing in her classroom. So the other thing is teaching and assessment practices. And we want to just say it should be obvious that they are using the Alberta curriculum. I was shocked. I was in a school last year and found out that like the administrator called me in and said, please, Yolanda, come in because they're buying stuff on Teacher Pay Teacher. And I don't think those worksheets are linked to the Alberta curriculum. And sure enough, my first look at some of the worksheets where the numbers have commas in them, I knew that we don't use those in Alberta. And that was my first go-to. But asking the teacher, what outcome is this reflecting or assessing? And the teacher said, what do you mean outcome? And wow. Anyway, also We want to make sure that all of our teaching and assessment practices focus on competencies, on literacy, on numeracy development, that they are building reasoning skills. We're building that mental math and fluency rather just the automaticity. We are using math vocabulary in our teaching and assessment. We use manipulatives to build that conceptual understanding. We're not using manipulatives after we've taught the concept. Just, oh yeah, by the way, in the curriculum it said you have to use base 10 bucks for this. No, 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 no. You need to use manipulatives to build conceptual understanding, rather than as an afterthought. Effective questionings. I can't stress enough that formative assessments are happening all the time. And what the responsive teaching is, it has to be based on where the students are at. There's a cycle. We have to look at the assessment cycle when we are teaching. So first of all, on the APLC website, we have the curriculum documents. We also have a scope and sequence for this is a great overview for administrators where kids came from with the concept and where they're going with the concept. And so if you look at these scope and sequence, you don't have to read a 50-page document. You can just find it on a scope and sequence. Oh, good thing I just thought of this. Please know that at APLC, we have numbered the outcomes. We have numbered the outcomes just for ease. And so how are they numbered? The first number, for example, is the grade. Then the letter is the organizing idea. So for example, the N comes from the numbers and operations organizing idea. Then it is the first outcome. And then the second number that comes after the dot is the row of understanding in that outcome. So it could be the first row, the second row, third row, as you see here. So we have numbered every outcome at APLC. Alberta Education has not numbered their outcomes. Not sure why, but yeah, I know for assessment purposes, it's a lot easier if they're numbered. And so again, we gave you questions or to consider and look fors. And then there's also conversation starters after you have been in the classroom. I want you to know that, like I said, we went through so many resources. And another great resource comes right out of the Ontario board, and it's called High Impact Instructional Practices in Math. I, like personally, think this document is a great overview. It's not long, it's a short document, but it gives you some great ideas for instructional practices and assessment in math. So how are you going to implement this in your classroom? Okay, I got to do this in 7 minutes. Good luck. Anyway, first of all, I'm going to address the administrators in the room. You are to reflect that you're effective. You want to make sure that make high achievement by all students a priority in your school. That everyone, you want to recognize and value high quality instruction and assessment. You must expect that all staff engage in that high level assessment and instruction. You want to make sure you create a community that supports your teachers and administrators, if you are a district representative here, so as they work to transform and improve instructional practices. Provide time for collegial work, for collaboration. You want to provide time for professional learning. And one of the things that kept coming up when we were doing this document is to stress to administrators Take time also to attend the professional learning with your teachers. It'll help you with what you want to see happening in your schools, and it will help you understand what the teacher is actually trying to achieve in their classrooms. And it also provides uh, um, support to your staff. So look for in your classrooms, look for what students are doing as well as the teacher. Make sure that they are using the curriculum. They're teaching the content and tasks are related to the curriculum. They have a strong learning environment. There's equity and ongoing assessment using formative assessment, including formative assessment, not just summative. And please expect and support that every teacher in your school is implementing high quality student centered math. It is non-negotiable. Teaching has to change in some classrooms. Some teachers are well on their way. Those teachers are your lead teachers. Help get them to help other teachers, and so that we support everyone, and so that there's growth across the board. There's a resource that was put out by APLC years ago that helps with essential conditions. I'm sure Nicole Lacusta will tell you that, yeah, she worked on this document, that we need to incorporate all stakeholders. It is systematically planned. It has to be sustained. It's meaningful. It is based on key priorities. All of this is outlined in the resource, and it has to involve everyone. And so the resource that I'm referring to is this one, A Guide to Support Implementation. There's 3 excellent books that have been put out by Corwin. There's a Math Pact, because to change a school, everyone, including the janitor, have to be on involved in this. So these books are great. There's a book for elementary, there's middle school and high school, all ideas, called the Math Pact. So like I said, they're in the green booklet put out by APLC. It just talks about how can we what are the essential conditions that we look for to make change? Because it is a shared responsibility, and it has to be based on research and evidence. It has to include everyone. We must have the resources for this. It must be included in the teacher growth plans, and we have to give time to make it work. So where can you access this graphic? This graphic, Jill, is on the APLC website. When you download this resource, you'll get the graphic. So there are many, many resources that I am going to give you, but there are 6 resources that we decided are your must reads that you have, administrators must have. One is the School Leader's Guide to Building and Sustaining Math Success. Everything you need for math coaching. Mm-hmm. Joe Bowler's Mathematical Mindsets, the Math Pact, the Numeracy Document, and the Guide to Essential Conditions. Those are our top 6. Remember, please, slow and steady won the race. So all of the documents I have put into a Wakelet that I'm going to drop. You do not have to have a membership. It is here. So if you go to this Wakelet, come on. What you'll find is it has 81 documents here. Everything is categorized. Everything here is in the overview of everything. So that's where you'll find your administrator's guide. That's where you'll find the checklist. You'll find the links to the curriculum, to the document with you'll find the document with the interactive number outcomes. You'll find the scope and sequence. Now, I've also put the scope and sequence for grade 7 to 9 in here. There's the link for like all the things that we found was in the overview. These are like, this is packed full of resources. If you want to build math mindsets, there's great articles and books and videos here. Numeracy documents is here, and then there's the numeracy environment website. Everything is here. Then there's stuff on equity. All of your vocabulary documents are here. There's things for building fluency, everything here for building a learning environment, a strong learning environment. Great things here for assessment in math. I just wanted to touch on two things. Aspen View did a great resource for formative and summative assessment of every single outcome in K to 6. In order to access this document, when you click on this, you must be asking for this document from a school website, from school email. You cannot ask for access from your personal Gmail account or Hotmail account. They will not give you access, but they will give you access if it's from a school account. And then there's Elk Island Public has given us all these different navigation tools for building thinking classrooms. I can go on and on, but I can't. I know it's late already, but here's all the great books that we've mentioned. And then there's articles and stuff here for math manipulatives. I'm sorry I'm holding you up. I want you to think about all the things that we went through. I'm going to just not do this, but I need you to take a minute. I need you to take a minute, please, just to do a post-learning survey for the consortia. If there is stuff that you need support on that we have talked about today, please put it into this survey and we will get back to you. Like, for example, if you want support in your school or in your school district to talk about this entire document, there's a couple of us that can come out and help you with that across the province. We can do it in person or we can do it online. We can also come out and help with any one of the 3 different categories because there's a lot going on here. And on that note, I'm going to just drop in the survey into the chat. And thank you very much for staying later. And thank you for coming. We really, really appreciate your time during summer. And in the end, have a great year.
Thanks, Yolanda. That was so many resources shared. I think everybody's looking forward